Okay, so first things first. Look how not Mormon this shirt is. Thank you very much.
Cover up your skin, you skank.
Hey, what's up guys? It's ex-mormon. I got my husband Jared helping me out today. Thank you. And today we're talking about what not to say when your family member tells you they're leaving the church. Which, you all already know this, but I think it's cathartic to review. Thanks to everyone who submitted comments and ideas for this video on the online forums that I posted this question, as well as my Instagram account. Thank you guys. We're basically going to go through the different categories as to how people react when you tell them they're leaving the church and why they shouldn't react in that way, or why it's not helpful or hurtful. So let's do it.
And I'll tell you why they should react that way.
Okay, good. Get both sides. This is gonna be awesome. Okay, so the first category for how someone reacts when they... God, I cannot get my shit together today. So the first category we have for you guys of how someone reacts when you tell them that you're leaving the church is that they blame Satan. So they'll say stuff like, I can't believe Satan deceived you, or I can't believe Satan has you, or you're now under the influence of Satan and I'm scared. All of those reactions are super effective at bringing people back into the church, because nothing motivates someone like thinking that Satan has a grasp on them.
I mean, prove that Satan doesn't have a grasp on you.
Oh man, I think this is, well, I don't want to say the most hurtful, but this is one of those things where when people say stuff like that, they're trying to protect you. They're trying to get you to act in a certain way. It's pretty manipulative, and they usually don't realize that. But I don't think they realize how hurtful it is. Like, coming from a Mormon perspective, I heard a family member recently say, because of me and my brother leaving, like, oh man, Satan is picking their family off one by one. And I heard that through the grapevine that a person had said that, and I'm just like, really? Like it's so hurtful to hear someone say something like that, because they're just implying that your decisions are literally being influenced by the most evil thing that exists.
I think they partially do it for themselves, too, because, I don't know, it helps to comfort you if a loved one turns away from the absolute truth, than to say, well, it's not completely their fault. It's partially Satan's fault.
Satan is
Probably
tricky.
makes it a little easier on them to swallow that pill.
Yeah. Well, and I get why they're saying it too, is just that that's what they've been taught. Like, why would you leave God's true church unless Satan tricked you? It makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. I just don't agree.
So I guess the conclusion we've come to is that they're right. So we'll scratch that one off the list.
Yep, you totally say that. Yep, okay, done. Next thing they do is they blame you. You're just too easily offended. Your testimony isn't strong enough. You just wanted to sin. You were watching too much porn. You haven't prayed and read your scriptures enough. All of these reasons are ways that they will try to blame you for your decision to leave the church. And it's all very hurtful, again, and it is not very effective. And especially, like, for me, I know I was praying really hard when I was feeling like I had to make a decision about my church attendance. And for them to basically assume that, like, you're not praying is, like, hurtful as well. Like, how spiritually stupid do you think I am?
Well, it's an easy assumption to make when, like, you're out of the church. Like, if you've left it and then you finally tell them a couple months later, they're like, well, it's because you're not praying and reading the scriptures. And a lot of times they'll act like they're all prophetic because they know, I bet you're not praying or reading your scripture. Well, no shit. I don't believe in it. I just told you that. I haven't believed for months. Why would I read a book that I think is wrong?
It's really funny. Well, and it's funny, too, because they'll be like, well, just read the Book of Mormon and you'll come back. But what they don't understand is that once you feel like you have evidence to suggest that the Book of Mormon is not true, then reading it doesn't make sense to you. And not only does it not make sense, but it's really triggering and hurtful because you're like, this book that used to mean so much to me, it now is triggering to read. So they just don't understand that kind of response, again, just doesn't facilitate you coming back. And all of these reactions, it only hurts the relationship that you have with that person, unfortunately. And unfortunately, they generally, sincerely just don't know better most of the time because they're just reacting in the way they've been kind of conditioned to act, unfortunately. So, the next category we have is they try to shame you or guilt you. So they'll say things like, you've lost the light in your eyes. Your pupils are dark now. Like the Lamanites. Let's see, what else they say? You have ruined our eternal family. Or you're breaking up our family. They'll say, I'm so disappointed in you. Or how could you do this to me? Where did I go wrong?
It's about me.
Oh, your faith crisis is so about me. Your children will suffer and be moralless and unhappy. Or I'm so worried about you. And just like very condescendingly, like, I'm so worried about your well-being. And so all of these responses are super common when you're leaving any kind of high-demand religion. And they're really just, when it comes down to it, very manipulative and usually coming from a big place of fear of, like, they're trying to basically shame you into behaving better.
Well, the tough part is that it makes sense why they react this way. Because, according to Mormon doctrine, you are ruining the eternal family. Like,
It's true.
So it makes sense. But I don't know how they think that's going to be helpful.
Right.
I think it's kind of like sort of a fight or flight response when, you're backed up to a wall and you panic and you just lash out. I feel like any parent or loved one who says, how could you do this to me? You're ruining the family. That's just like a last-ditch effort that they don't even think is going to be effective.
Yeah.
Like, if I can't spiritual them back into the church, then I guess I have to use guilt.
Yeah. And really, it is coming from a sincere place of fear. And, like, we got to have compassion for that. But it hurts really bad to hear people say those things about you. Like, I know I had a lot of people telling me that I was going to be a bad mom because of leaving the church. And that hurts because it's like they're attacking you as a person based on your beliefs. And it just feels so low. Like, and again, it's like they just don't get it. I feel like they really don't get how hurtful it is because they just believe that it's like a fact. Like, it's a fact. You can't be a good mom outside of the church. So they're trying to, like, help you, but it just hurts really bad. It just burns bridges. The next category is they will try to belittle or dismiss your concerns. So the most common way this happens is just because blank thing happened doesn't mean the church isn't true. And this has to do more with like family history and things that general authorities have said or whatever. Because this is them trying to say, well, just because Joseph Smith married young women doesn't mean the church isn't true. And it's like, really?
Look, buddy, I know you're freaked out that God threatened to kill Joseph Smith if he didn't marry a 14-year-old, but details. It's still true.
Right. People will say stuff like, Joseph Smith and Brigham Young were just men. They'll say, church history only strengthens my testimony.
I think... I don't like to assume motive. Okay, so I don't know this. But whenever somebody says that, I suspect that they're lying. Because it can't. I can't conceive of a way that like you could possibly hear some of these stories and be like, you know what, actually, it's like, hey, did you know Joseph Smith sent men away on missions and married their wives while they were gone? You know, I actually believe more now that you said that. Thank you so much. I'm going to bear my testimony about that exact thing on Sunday.
Right. I really feel like it's one of those things where they say it just because they've heard it a lot. I don't know. I mean, I hear apologists say it too, and I just feel like there's just no way. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't get it. Another thing they'll say is, people aren't perfect, but the gospel is. And that's just another way to try to dismiss and belittle your concerns. Because they'll just say, oh, like, you know, all these people were killed at Mountain Meadows Massacre, but it's not a big deal because people are not perfect, but the gospel is, so you don't need to worry about that, you know? And it just, it hurts. Like, they think if they can belittle your concern that it will increase your faith, but it doesn't. It just makes you feel unheard and dismissed.
This one is my absolute least favorite thing that people say, and people say it often. And I hate it because I feel the opposite. It's the church, the structure, the rules that I don't like. I don't like how they do things. It's not the people. I'm surrounded by Mormons. I like them. I don't dislike them at a ratio different than regular people, you know?
You're talking about like how they blame the people when you have a problem.
Yeah, there's like a hierarchy of things that you can throw the blame onto, and you can never throw the blame onto God. The next step is Joseph Smith, but he's just about on par. You can't really throw anything on Joseph Smith. Mm-hmm. So anything, like if growing up, I didn't think Joseph Smith started polygamy. Everyone told me, no, that was Brigham Young. You could throw a lot of shit on Brigham Young, and the sacred cows were still protected. Yeah. But at the bottom of that pyramid are the members. The church can just absolutely shit on its membership. And why are you doing that? These are your people. Like, these are the people holding you up, tithing at 10% when they could be saving up money for retirement or whatever. Just be nice to them a little bit. They're good.
Right. And I know why they're doing that. It's because, like, if someone, you know, if you have a shitty bishop or whatever, then it's like they want to say, well, just because you have a shitty bishop, you shouldn't leave. Like, the people aren't perfect, but the gospel is. And I get where they're coming from with that, because it's like, yeah, just because you have a shitty bishop doesn't mean you should abandon God's truth. But the problem is, usually that's not your problem. Usually it's a lot more than that. So do you get what I'm saying with that? Like, So again, I get where they're coming from when they say, like, oh, it's just people make mistakes, not the church. But again, it's just belittling what may be some very serious concerns that you have about church history or about the way people are treating you in your ward or whatever. Another way they'll belittle or dismiss your concerns
we'll call this one the Holland.
Is that they will say, smarter people than you have stayed in the church. And that is just, an appeal to authority of like, well, someone smarter than you has stayed in the church, so you don't know crap. You know? I mean, what else is that trying to say?
It is an appeal to authority, and dumber people than me have stayed in the church. The smarter people than me have left the church. Like... Yeah. Intelligence doesn't really seem to hold any weight on what you believe. They're very smart people in and out of the church. Right. Russell M. Nelson, really smart dude.
Really. Like, heart surgeon, prophet of the church, very smart guy.
Yeah. I don't know. That's just, it is just an appeal to authority. Like, just because he knows how to do heart surgery doesn't mean he's going to understand how to dissect philosophy, you know?
Sure. Another thing with belittling and dismissing your concerns they'll do is you'll bring up like a concern like, well, I'm kind of worried about how this thing happened. And they'll say, like with church history, and they'll say, oh, I've known about blank thing for years and I'm still in the church. And again, it's another way they're just trying to dismiss your concerns, because if they can dismiss your concerns, then you probably won't leave, right?
Yeah. And also there's the element that if you did hear when you were 5 years old about some of these atrocities, some of them wouldn't seem quite as atrocious. A lot of people when they leave are less bothered by the crap that they find out and more bothered by the fact that it was hidden from them, or they felt like it was hidden from them.
It's true.
It was hidden from them.
Right. It's on the website. The CEO.
The gospel topic.
It's on the website. It's not hidden. Just no one knows about it.
Somebody calculated, I think you have to click like 8 different things to get to them.
From the 8 different links.
I don't remember exactly what it is.
That's funny. Yeah. Not hidden, just difficult. The next category I find pretty funny is they will actually just tell you what you believe. You know it's true. I know you know it's true. They'll say stuff like, it breaks my heart that you would turn away from what you know is right. Or, how can you deny your spiritual experiences? And sometimes they'll even bring up a certain experience, like, what about that time you and me were at the temple and da-da-da? Like, and honestly, my response to that is, like, I don't know, I'm a fan of spirituality. I'm a fan of good spiritual experiences, but I don't believe that those spiritual experiences necessarily mean that your church is the only one true church and you can't be happy outside of it and blah, 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 right? Because, I don't know, I'm still, like, I'm not totally sure what I believe, but if I were to believe in God, which I would like to, then I would think, why wouldn't he want everyone to have good spiritual experiences if they're trying to have spiritual experiences? And I feel like the church likes to claim, like, oh, you had a spiritual experience during a sacrament meeting, it's because our church is true. I feel like they're just kind of taking credit for what might just be your natural ability to engage in spirituality. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, and you kind of got to distinguish between, like, a true principle and just reality.
Yeah.
Because when I watch Lord of the Rings, at the end of Return of the King, when Aragorn turns and looks at his tiny little army that's outnumbered 1,000 to 1, smiles, and then just charges 100,000 orcs, and, like, you get chills and you get that feeling, and you're like, that is truth. That's like a true principle, to be willing to die for your cause, like to just charge into certain death. It's cool. It's a true principle. It's not real. That thing didn't happen. Just because it's a true principle doesn't mean that Aragorn actually stormed the Black Gate.
Right.
So there's a lot of things you can find in the Book of Mormon. To this day, this story of Alma the Elder is one of my favorite stories ever. A dude that saw something wrong with his government and his people, and he descended from his high position to take a stand against what he viewed as evil. That's at the risk of death, like he gave up so much, and you can read that and you get that inspiring.
I'm getting chills right now.
You're like, that is a true principle. Like, having the gall to just stand up to death and spit in its face is awesome.
Right.
It doesn't mean it happened, and that's kind of, I think, what they get confused. Right. And it doesn't have to have happened to be a pretty cool story.
It's true. Like, we find inspiration from stories everywhere, in movies, in books, in, like, everywhere. And it doesn't have to be true to inspire amazing action. So, yeah, I love that. Anyway, it's definitely a common reaction that people have where when you tell them you don't believe anymore, they tell you what you actually believe. Thank goodness they know better what you believe.
I don't believe anymore. Yeah, you do.
Basically what happens.
Damn it. Okay, I'm going back.
Darn. So this next category is really common as well, and this is where they'll bear their testimony to you. They'll quote scriptures or prophets.
Predict the future.
Oh, yeah. I did? Oh, yeah. My bad. Thank you. This next category is they will predict the future. And they'll say things like, you will regret this. You will come back. You will not be happy without the church.
You will regret this, Mr. Bond.
That's funny. And here's the thing. Anytime a loved one makes a decision that, is big and that they kind of struggled with, like, the last thing they want to hear is, you're going to regret that decision. No one wants to hear that. It's not helpful. Like, it doesn't help. It really just hurts. And again, they really do believe they're coming from this good place of they're trying to save you. They're trying to help you. Like, it's sincere, but it just doesn't work, and it ends up ruining relationships.
And to put it into perspective, like, if my son came home at, 18, and he's like, Dad, check this out, and he got a spider web tattooed to his face, I could say you'll regret this, because he will. But that's not going to help, because he already did the thing, and he'll find out soon enough, like, hopefully within a day or two, that he regrets it. What I should say is, fuck.
Another rendition of this they'll say is, I'm just so sad for you because of all the blessings you're going to miss out on. Which again is predicting the future as well as kind of guilt tripping and manipulating. And is not conducive to bringing someone back into the fold.
And for some godforsaken reason, Mormons consider a 10% pay cut to be blessings. Oh no.
Oh my God.
I'm not going to be blessed. Wipe my tears with hundreds.
It's so funny. Okay. This next category is super common and probably one of the most common is they'll bear their testimony or they'll quote scriptures at you or quote prophets. So things like they'll say wickedness never was happiness. Alma 42:10. That one is just so ridiculous to me because it's like basically they're just calling you straight up evil, like without really realizing what they're doing. So when people comment that like on my channel or Instagram or whatever, I'll just say like, what about like what part of me do you consider to be wicked? Like because again, like I'm like what about my being makes me wicked? Like I'm a good mom, I'm a good friend, I'm an upstanding member of the community, I vote. Like what about that sounds wicked to you? Is it because I don't go to church that makes me wicked? Like because that just sounds so extreme to me that we would use the word wicked for that.
Yeah. I mean, so the phrase wickedness never was happiness is actually a good one. Like, I like that in a lot of ways. I don't like their definition of wickedness. I think they're very incorrect about that. But I like the idea of thinking that you can't be a whole person if you're committing evil acts. Like if you're going to a house and just robbing people's stuff, or if you're embezzling from like a family company or whatever, you're doing these things that are obviously bad, kind of universally condemned.
Yeah.
There's got to be a part of you that can't be super happy about it. So it's another thing that might be a true principle, but drinking a cup of coffee never was happiness doesn't really make a lot of sense.
That's funny. The most common response is they'll bear their testimony and they'll say stuff like, I know Joseph Smith was a prophet. I know the Book of Mormon's true. I know the church is true. And saying that stuff, they're trying to spark the Jesus in you to remember your testimony. But what they don't understand is that saying stuff like that to you doesn't help. especially if your issues are with church history and stuff like that. Because if they say to you, I know Joseph Smith was a prophet, what that's saying is someone who I perceive as treating women very badly was chosen by God. That doesn't make me want to come back to church. Like, that makes me want to hate God. And then there's the Book of Mormon is true, which again, if there's true principles versus actually true, well, the LDS Church perpetuates that this is historically accurate book, and if you don't believe that's the case based on evidence, then them saying that doesn't, again, make sense to you. And then for them to say the church is true, again, just falls on those things, and you're just like, okay, thank you for this chat.
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, if you're going to choose from any of the things on this list to say, bear your testimony is the easiest to deal with.
Right.
It's the least condescending. It's kind of just a sort of a final effort of saying, well, this is what I believe.
Yeah.
And I know what they want to do. They want to invoke spiritual feelings in you so you can be like, okay, that was the kick in the pants I needed to come back or whatever. But
yeah,
I don't know. I don't mind if people bear their testimony. I mean, I get what they're doing. I get that it's very meaningful to them. But I think they're instructed to do that mostly as a conversation stopper, so that
it is.
We don't continue telling them shit they don't want to hear.
Yeah, that's possible. I mean, because like the church will teach you, like, oh, if someone is struggling or whatever, just bear your testimony because they can't argue with your testimony. And it's like, well, really, we can. But it is more effective from the perspective of a believer to approach it that way than to try to argue the nitty-gritty of church history of like, oh, no, that didn't actually happen that way, or you don't know the full story, or da-da-da-da-da, and it can go on and on and on, and it can make the argument a lot more emotionally charged rather than just kind of, like you said, shutting it down by saying, well, this is what I believe, which, again, is not a bad thing to do. We're just kind of going through what, is commonly happens. Another thing that they quote with, scriptures and prophets and stuff they'll say a lot is, doubt your doubts before you doubt your faith, which was from Gok Dwarf.
Doubt your doubts before... I wish he had more of I wish he had more of a conniving accent, like a Bond villain or something, like stroking his cat. Doubt your doubts before you doubt your faith, Mr. Bond.
Oh my gosh. And this Gok Dwarf is one of the general authorities of the church. Basically, he was just trying to tell people, like, if you're having doubts, like, try to give less credence to them and more credence to the faith that you do have, which, honestly, I don't think is a bad thing to say to people, but it's
a confusing thing to say.
It's not super effective.
It's Inception. It's a doubt within a doubt.
Oh my gosh. Another thing they'll say is the second coming is happening soon, and even the most elect will be led astray or deceived.
I mean, that's a way of putting you on a pedestal and then knocking you down in the same sentence. It's like, you're so smart, you're elect, you're one of the top dogs, and you're deceived.
Let me compliment you and also, slap you in the same sentence.
Somehow you're both really smart and really stupid at once. I don't know. Take what you will from that.
Yeah. And again, they're saying it because they believe it, but... Again, it's hurtful when you approach someone in that condescending way of saying, like, you're deceived. Like, it's just like, it just hurts. It doesn't help. Okay, the last category we have are the extreme cases. And this is what they'll say stuff like, better safe than sorry. Meaning, you should live your entire life aligned with the Mormon values and with being a practicing Mormon.
Just in case.
Because you want to go to heaven, right? Which, if we were to apply that, you could apply that to all religions and then you'd be screwed because it'd be like, wouldn't you want to be every religion just in case so that you are the right one? But then there's so many religions that contradict each other. So like, aren't you just kind of screwed either way?
I mean, if it was some sort of a dichotomy where it's Mormonism or bust, then that might make sense. Mm-hmm. To live your life as a Mormon. The thing is, even within Mormonism, God knows your heart. So I feel like if you're faking it, he's going to be like, well, you're still going to the celestial kingdom. You just did it because you didn't want to go to the celestial kingdom.
That's true. It's like, even if you stay just in case, like what that's saying is you wouldn't even be able to be like a temple practicing Mormon because you would be like, going to the interview and they'd be like, do you believe da 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 da? And you'd have to either say yes
and lie,
which going to the temple through lying is bad, or you'd have to say no and then not have a temple recommend.
Yeah.
And
Pascal's Wager is stupid because for every reason.
Explain what Pascal's Wager is for people who don't know.
This is Pascal's Wager. It's just saying, well, it's a Christian saying to an atheist, why don't you just be a Christian? Because if I'm wrong, as a Christian, a practicing Christian, if I'm wrong, then you and I get the same reward. There's really nothing bad. If I'm right, I go to heaven.
And you
as an atheist, if you're wrong, then you go to hell. So you might as well be a Christian so that on the chance that I'm right, you go to heaven. On the chance that you're right, same thing still happens. You don't have anything to lose. And just playing the odds like that on how to live your entire life is kind of absurd.
Yeah.
Because, first off, Pascal's Wager kind of assumes a dichotomy, that it's Christianity or nothing. But there's just so much. There's so many religions within Christianity that say that the other Christian religions aren't doing it right. They're going to hell. There's thousands and thousands of religions. And so, basically, Pascal's Wager brings your chances from, 0 in a million to 1 in a million. And that's even just assuming that humans have found the right religion.
Yes, that's a pretty good sum up. So yeah, when people tell you to be Mormon because it's better safe than sorry, I mean,
we'll have to link the Pascal's Wager video.
Yeah. What's his name? Misplaced Faith actually did a really cool video on Pascal's Wager applied to Mormonism. So we'll put that in the link if you're interested in checking it out. Anyway, yeah, so that's one of those extreme cases that you may experience from your family or friends. Another extreme case is where they will wish bad things happen to you in hopes that it will bring you back to God. And this is obviously extremely hurtful and damaging because basically they're actually wishing harm on you. And just what kind of family member does that? And also wishing that God would perform that harm on you, God would basically punish you or hurt you in order to get you to believe in him. And to me, that's just what the heck? And I get it because I used to think that way, because it was that thing of oh, God will humble his people and God will humble them so that they turn to him. And it's that whole concept, but it's just taken to the extreme and it's scary.
It's almost like you're viewing God as some sort of Italian mobster. He's coming looking for his protection money, and you say, I don't believe in this shit anymore. I'm not giving you the protection money. And he's like, you're not gonna pay your tithing. Would be a shame if something would have happened to your salvation. You know?
Oh my gosh. Right, or even in this life, it'd be a shame if something bad would happen. Because that's what they believe is you're gonna miss out on blessings. Bad things are gonna happen to your family, and all
then
this.
The other way they do it is by acting afraid of what's gonna happen to you, rather than wishing it on you. They'd be like, oh, I'm not responsible for nothing that happens to you after this. I'm afraid to see what's gonna happen. I'm gonna keep my distance.
Oh my gosh, that's so true. The last response that you may, another response you may expect from these kind of more extreme cases is when family members will just like totally flat out reject you, and they'll say stuff like, I'm removing you out of our will, or like, you're not invited to family functions anymore. And, if you ever decide to believe the way we believe again, you're welcome back. Which is just the opposite of what I like to strive for, is unconditional love from family.
It's like that beautiful prodigal son story. If the dad just kicked him out instead of him walking away.
That is so true. Oh my gosh. Well, this has been very cathartic going through these reasons and reading all of your comments about what has happened to you guys as a result of your family's reaction to you leaving and everything. And just as a reminder again, like, we want to have compassion for our family because we should know better than anyone where they're coming from, which is that they are believing what they're telling you is true, and they really think they're helping you, or they're trying really hard to help you even though it's not effective. So be compassionate with your Mormon family members. The way they react sometimes sucks, but
cut them a little bit of slack if you're their first one, if you're the first important person in their life leaving the church. It breaks their brain apart, and I know that it's difficult on you. It is difficult on them too, and that sucks that it has to be that way, but it does. And it seems to get easier on people with each progressing person. They seem to not take it so hard the next few times it happens with other people that they love. So when they say something stupid and obviously mean and hurtful, just be like, learn to roll your eyes a lot.
Yeah. And or just even say, well, is that how you really feel? Do you really believe that? Like, get the, I don't know if that's a good thing to do. It depends on the person, but unfortunately it's true that most of the older generations especially have been told that the worst thing that can happen to your family is someone going astray. So you got to have compassion for them in that respect, just because they literally believe this is the absolute worst thing that can happen, and if they can try to do anything to get you to stay, they will do it. And it's often not intentional, the hurt and damage that they are perpetuating when they do so.
Yeah, a lot of these people grew up in a time where return from your mission with honor or return in a coffin was like an inspirational thought.
It's true. It's scary.
Don't fuck nobody.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please comment down below what else not to say to someone who leaves the church. And it would mean so much to me if you give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, because it really helps my channel grow. Thank you guys, and we'll see you in the next video.